very much. So now it's time for our next presentation by Dr. Ana Fernandes Pinto. We've met once before, a long time ago. We had lunch together and talked about possible participation in one of the upcoming conferences. Then I'm very glad that you have made it this time, although it is still virtually. You are connected to the Center for the Humanities of the Universidade Nova de Lisboa, the Faculty of Historical Sciences, and you are presently, if I'm not mistaken, editor-in-chief responsible for the bulletin, which I already introduced you when I introduced our keynote speaker. We are very eager to hear your presentation about Japan in the historical and diplomatic archives at Portuguese. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor, for your nice words and of recognizing still so long. I mean, after so many years that we have lunch together. I hope you can listen me. And I will try to share with you my PowerPoint. Apologize me because I'm not so used to use these digital resources, and I have lots of files open at this moment. So I hope now that I can share with you the PowerPoint. Well, my paper is focused. It is not sharing, but hopefully at the end, it will. Are you listening to me?
We can see you, but not your PowerPoint so far.
But you listen to me? I don't know if I will. You listen to me?
I hear you, yes. I don't know
okay, that's good. Okay, because my my laptop, I think, collapsed. Well, if I can't get the PowerPoint, it's a shame, but well, I continue. My paper is focused on the sources on the diplomatic relations between Portugal and Japan preserved at historical diplomatic archives of the Foreign Affairs in Lisbon. This paper is the first output of a wider project centered on the publication of a collection of documents at this archive, representative of the diplomatic relations between Portugal and Japan, the most of them never studied, neither published. Are you still there? Because my image is blocked. I don't know if the listening is also blocked. Can you give me a sign that you are listening to me?
We can hear you, we see you.
Okay, okay. So this catalog is planned to cover the long period from 1860, date of the signature of the Treaty of Peace, Friendship and Commerce between Portugal and Japan. And I'm not sure still at the date of the end, but it will be around 1952, time of the end of MacArthur administration. So, as you see, this is still a work in project. The historical diplomatic archives includes documents from the foreign affairs related with internal service, but also with external service. So Portuguese embassies, consulates abroad, missions with international organization, and also includes a collection of treaties and other international acts. As regard to Japan, historical diplomatic archive contains treaties, correspondence, and reports, which reveal to be an important array of sources worth of being studied, not only because of their historical value, but also because their informative quality. By that, I mean, and I want to emphasize, that all diplomats who serve in Japan are distinguished by their clarity of speech, their tremendous capacity of synthesis, analysis, and anticipation of future scenarios. Several reasons can explain the high proficiency of Portuguese foreign affairs officials in Japan. These officials held a position in a very distant mission. Communication with Lisbon was both irregular and slow, and they always complaining about these problems. Distance and difficulty in communications undoubtedly increase their responsibilities. And in addition, the correspondence sent to Foreign Affairs is full of complaints about the short number of employees in the embassy in Tokyo. So there was an awareness in Lisbon of the need to choose officials highly qualified. In my opinion, this might explain the fact that the position was mostly held by plenipotentiary ministers, therefore men at the top of the diplomatic career. And in the situations that the post was held by lower hierarchy officials, those men were carefully chosen since their proven distinguished capacities. Well, I would like to share the screen, but I don't know what you can see actually. Can you see my PowerPoint?
It's much better. I think we
No?
managed, yes, to conjure that. Okay. Treaty of Peace.
You see. Okay, so you are, okay, that's good. That's great. I'm happy I managed to do this. Okay. Today, I'm going to present some first remarks about my preliminary approach to these sources. So this is, and my approach to the sources was oriented by one main question. That is, understand the role and the importance of Portugal in what is called the second encounter with the West, after 2 centuries had elapsed since the Tokugawa government had decreed a rigorous control over all relations with the outside, so in 1640. In 1860 was signed the treaties that you can see in the screen, the Treaty of Peace, Friendship and Commerce between Portuguese King and the Emperor of Japan. And the signature occurred 2 years after Japan has reached similar agreements with the United States, Great Britain, Russia, Holland and France. The treaty opened the way for the relation between the two nations to resume. It authorized the diplomatic presence and trade between the two countries in terms that place Portugal on par with other nations and, in what was a particularly sensitive issue, guaranteed the Portuguese subjects residing in Japan the free practice of their religions and the right to erect buildings as places of worship. And this is quite worthy of note, since the relations were abruptly interrupted in 1640 because of religious matters. Albeit the signature of this treaty, until 1903, the Portuguese diplomatic mission remained non-resident, and the post of Minister of Portugal in Japan was held concurrently by the governor of Macau, who was also plenipotentiary minister in China and Xi'an. So, an accumulation of posts that frame and means to optimize available resource. The first plenipotentiary minister to reside in Japan was José Batalha de Freitas in 903, as I said. This means that until 903, Japan does not occupy a prominent place in the Portuguese diplomacy, and consequently, the sources are quite scarce. However, They are not in existence. During that time, Portugal was represented in Japanese territory by consuls. A few stands out for their accuracy, being particularly the case of Venceslau Moraes. Probably all of you have already heard about Moraes, very well known nowadays as a romantic writer about Japanese soul and traditions. But that was consul of Kobe and Osaka and general consul of Portugal, posts that he occupied consecutively for 14 years, from 1899 until 1930, when he resigns. And during that period, he wrote not only with proficiency, but also long-windedly. And why? Because he was strong committed in the establishment of direct relations between Portugal and Japan, and he advocated the long-term transformation of Macau in a commercial hub between Portugal and the Far East. So he wrote reports very detailed, informative, rigorous, very valuable for the study of economic and social issues. Apart from these few technical analyses, and for the period before 1903, the date of the establishment of the Portuguese embassy in Tokyo, there are some notable documents arising from the diplomatic relations preserved in the Historical Diplomatic Archive. This treaty that you can see, and hopefully it will appear, yes, a letter signed by Tokugawa Iemochi presenting the Japanese ambassador sent to Europe in 1862. This was the first Japanese embassy sent to Europe after the end of Sakoku. It was a very important embassy, not only because it was the first one, but because it has as aim to ratify the treaties signed 2 years earlier, and to negotiate the postponement of the further entrance of foreigners in Japan. And also, it also preserved in the archive several lists of gifts sent by the shogun. And I will linger on this topic of the lists because they reveal very important information. Not only allow us to visualize how Japan projects himself in a very sensitive moment of his history, when he was negotiating unequal treaties, but also allowed us to infer conclusions in Japan's diplomatic strategy. And I will give particular attention to these lists of gifts dated from 1862. In the list, we can see that it states that it will be offered 2 swords, a horse saddle and his equipment, 10 kakemono, a shelving cabinet, 5 shutters, byobu, kind of byobu, a desk bosk for writing, and 10 pieces of fabric, and also 2 draperies in brocaded fabrics. Well, for the moment, this list preserved in the Portuguese Diplomatic Archive is apparently the only Japanese copy kept in European archives. Moreover, 4 years ago, during the preparation of the exhibition of a striking story, I don't know if you can see in the screen the catalog, this list of gifts preserved in Lisbon allowed the identification of objects preserved at the Juda National Palace for very long dispersed, not properly identified, and not historically connected. And we know that the Japanese were received by the newlyweds, the Japanese ambassadors, sorry, were received by Don Luís and Dona Maria de Saboia at Ajuda Palace where the objects were kept. On the other hand, a recent discovery of documents at the diplomatic archives in Japan in 2019, and this is information that is public in this catalog in an exhibition in Fontainebleau. The discovery of documents in Japan show that the 1860s, the Bakufu officials discussed and planned a combo of gifts similar to all countries that would be visited by the embassy in 1862. So this list of gifts is similar to all the countries that were visited by the embassy, and the fact that all all the countries received the same kind of objects testifies that Japan observed a diplomatic strategy strictly egalitarian, and I'm quoting, in the treatment of interlocutors, and was committed to avoid any risk in its diplomatic approach to Europe. The most striking, there's more around this list. The most striking gift was a complete set of horse equipment, including a saddle, a harness, a horse mask, and a horse tack. The saddle, that you can see a picture here, it was in the exhibition of this, at National Palace in Ajuda in 2019. The saddle, it has the signature of Daijo Masanari, and its date from 1649. Daijo Masanari was a master at the serf of Tokugawa Iemitsu. So this is a magnificent offer that meant to testify the luxury, the uniqueness, and the artistic world funded and appreciated by Japanese warrior elite. What is important in this is the fact that this gift, so if there was a combo of gifts, if all the countries receive the same kind of gift, it is important to notice that only in Portugal, apparently, it preserved this equipment, this very striking gift of the horse equipment. On the other hand, further investigation in other countries, namely in France, give us an idea of the gifts that are stated in this list, but they are not preserved at the National Palace. And I'm referring to the kakemono that are preserved in the castle of Fontainebleau. That recent research connected this kakemono with these gifts from the embassy of 1862. There are further lists in the Portuguese historical diplomatic archives, namely this enormous list, but for the moment I can't develop further since recent research in France pose a lot of questions that oblige further inquiries. We know that, and the archives testify that in 1864, a new Japanese embassy visited France, and the historical diplomatic archives in Lisbon tell us that in the initial project, a visit to Lisbon was planned. However, that visit did not materialize because while still in Paris, the Japanese emissaries decided to return to Japan in face of difficulties in the negotiation with France. And from France, the ambassador sent a letter to the Portuguese king explaining the need to return and informing the need to return to Japan and informing him that the gifts will arrive in Lisbon via London. So it is in this context that this list of gifts that is shown in your screen need to be interpreted. And as I was saying, there are lots of questions arising in terms of this list. This is the list of the presents to the King of Portugal, not sure. This is a list of gifts to the ministers working at the foreign affairs, it might be. Or is whether the list that refers the gifts sent in return as a thank of the way the embassy, the first Japanese embassy was received in Lisbon in 1862, because we know that in France there are some gifts that was in this context, offered in this context of thanks. So this, there are still lots of questions arising this topic, and as you can see, I have been detailed a lot these these most notable documents that are preserved at the archive. But I thought it seemed very interesting to be here the results of a very recent investigation that supplements the research in other countries. And in turns, this lists testimony the importance of and the potential of the sources preserved at historical diplomatic archives. Notwithstanding, because I think I still have a few minutes, I state in the abstract of this paper that the aim of this paper was to highlight how the sources testimony the Japanese approach to the historical relations with Portugal for the construction of an identity discourse. Well, I would like not finishing without giving a glimpse on this topic. And this is also a first preliminary results of my research on the archive. On 29 December 1903, the Portuguese delegation in Tokyo was inaugurated. José Batalha de Freitas presented his credentials and became the first minister plenipotentiary to reside in Japan. The establishment of the Portuguese embassy coincides with Japan's affirmation on the international politics, a path that will lead to the imposition of an imperial Japan. In this process, Japan shows an ongoing interest in its past, particularly in the period of the first contacts with the West. It was urgent to Japan to reconstruct his memory, a past where it has his self-determination. Sources at the archive testifies that diplomats becoming aware of this movement intensified it at utmost. In their correspondence to the Foreign Office in Lisbon, they stress, the diplomats so stress not only the importance of the Japanese historical connection between Portugal and Japan, but also the very useful impact of this angle on diplomatic action. And what is very interesting that the sources and the correspondence of the diplomats show us is that on the time, diplomats were very, very centered in this culture side of the diplomatic relations and cultivated at utmost, because they understood that this bond with this historical bond was key for Japanese construction of their own identity. I would love to develop more these ideas. I have a lot of information of specific actions took by Portuguese diplomats in Japan to cultivate this historical bond. But well, time flies, and I think I have finished my the time. Well, no. Is there anybody there?
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for throwing some light on the possibilities of further exploration of the archives of the Foreign Office, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Portugal. Thank you very much. The floor is open for questions or remarks. Do I see anyone raising his or her hand in the room? Yes.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Okay.
Thank you for a really interesting presentation. If I understood you correctly, the gift of the horse equipment, it is only preserved in Portugal. And you mentioned there may be kakemono in France. Are any other 7 gifts found in any European countries? Are there any that are held in multiple places, or and is there any speculation on what may have happened to the gifts that were given? Were they, simply discarded, or, is this something you're talking with other scholars about who are researching their country's diplomatic histories with Japan?
Okay, thank you for your question. Who made the question? Do you mind to identify yourself?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My name's Rebecca Corbett. I'm from the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, America.
Okay. Well, thank you for your question. That is very interesting, and there arise lots of questions too. Well, it's very interesting because they had been developing different research in different countries without knowing each other that we were doing our research. So suddenly it occurs that we connected each other, and we realize that we are doing the same kind of research. And I'm speaking about myself here in Portugal, and I made this research during the work of this exhibition that I co-curated with Alexandre Corvelo. And there was some research done at that time by the Palácio da Ajuda by Maria José Tavares, but the finding of this list of gifts connected all the objects that are still preserved in National Palace, Ajuda National Palace. There you can find all these object lists except the kakemono. What is very interesting is that at the same time there was doing some research in France because of this exhibition that was held in Fontainebleau Castle in 2019, exactly the same time that we were exhibiting here in Lisbon the striking story. And in French they were doing some research on the kakemono, and simultaneously it was found, this is the coincidence of life, it was found in the Japanese diplomatic archives the list of the gifts sent by the shogun in this first embassy. So suddenly all these pieces connected, and so we don't have the kakemono, at least we can't identify for now the kakemono sent, and supposedly they were sent because the gifts were a combo to all the countries. So we don't have the kakemono, but the kakemono exists in France in Fontainebleau Castle. We can't at this moment identify all the objects that are quoted in the 1864 list. And as I was saying, actually, we don't know if it was what kind in that offer. It's in what context is given. So we are still doing a lot of research on this topic, and we know I haven't talked about that, but we know there are armor in that picture with the horse equipment. You saw an armor. We know that there in that list of 1864, it's quoted do and the protection of the tides. And we know that that armor, it's kept in the Palácio Ajuda. If the armor that is shown near the horse equipment is the do and the protection of tides sent and refer in this list of 1864, we are not sure. So there are lots of research to be done. We know that there are an armor in Victoria and Albert Museum that was sent to Europe exactly at the same time in the context of an embassy. So there are still lots of dots to be connected, and it is clearly a work in construction and research in construction. But for the moment, if you want to see these authors, you have to go to the Palácio de Ajuda.
Thank you. That's very interesting.
Thank you very much. Any other question, please? No, I have actually two questions. First, you showed the first page of the Treaty of Amity or Peace, Friendship with Japan. The Portuguese language one, I guess, or I assume that in that booklet, there is also a Dutch and a Japanese version.
Yes, it is true.
Okay.
So the treaty was published in the three languages: Japanese, Portuguese, and Dutch.
Okay. And then the EAJRS mission, they didn't make it, I think, in the end to Portugal, where they intended to visit it. Did you find or have you come across any correspondence with the EAJRS mission when they were visiting Europe? That's 73. That would be 1873.
Yes, there are some documents on that embassy, but well, it's how I say that this is a very diplomatic letter saying we are not able to go there to Lisbon. So the point here is understand if at a certain point Japan understood that Portugal was no longer a key country in the construction of the future. So and this is very important to me in my guiding my research is that in what point Japanese understood that Portuguese was not longer an imperial country, so that was not the most important nation to be in dialogue. And that's why it's so important. This second question in my research is that even though that Portugal did not develop no longer a key role in the international politics, at the end became important to Japan, because when Japan tried to gather their memory and to construct their history, Portugal is there as the first nation. And so Japan was obliged or wanted to reconnect with Portugal because Portugal was a key element in his own history.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Anyone else? It's now, at least on my watch, 1:45. According to the program, we are breaking at 1 o'clock for lunch, so we are early, but I don't think that hurts. So let's conclude this session here. I thank everyone. First of all, keynote speaker and the other presenters. and then all of you for your attention and your questions. And we will be reconvening at 2 o'clock when Naomi is going to chair the session number 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you.